Every morning you wake up with a choice: repeat yesterday or take control of today. Most people don't realize how the first 10 minutes after opening their eyes decide how the next 15 hours will go. Your mindset, your focus, your internal tone, that's where your entire day is either won or lost. Today is about reclaiming that power. This message is for your mornings, something short, real, and practical that sets your day on track before the world pulls you in 100 directions. Your first thoughts in the morning are not just ideas floating through your mind. They are emotional instructions sent to your body. If the first message you send yourself is stress, worry, or dread, your body responds as if those fears are already happening. Your breathing changes, your heartbeat changes, your posture changes, and suddenly you're starting the day already behind. Most people think their day goes bad later, but the truth is, many days are lost before they even open their eyes. When you wake up and immediately think of everything going wrong, your brain primes itself to filter the rest of the day through that same negative lens. It's not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about choosing not to sabotage yourself before you even get started. Morning thoughts shape perception, and perception shapes behavior. For example, waking up thinking, "I'm already late," pushes you into defensive mode, even if nothing bad has happened yet. You hurry, rush, cut corners, and feel overwhelmed all before breakfast. But waking up thinking, "I have time to start intentionally," activates a completely different part of the brain, one that leads instead of reacts. In that state, the same schedule, same tasks, and same responsibilities feel different because you feel different. You start moving with purpose. You stop feeling like life is happening to you. And that shift in internal tone sets you up to experience the day as something you can influence instead of something you are trying to survive. The first thoughts of the day are also powerful because they shape memory recall. If your first thought is about something that went wrong yesterday, your brain automatically begins scanning for more things that support that feeling. Your mind starts processing the past, not the present, and you begin your day carrying emotional weight that belonged to another moment. But if instead your first thought is about what's possible today, your brain begins scanning future potential. You open the day with movement rather than regret. You're not dragging yesterday into today. You're stepping forward instead of backward. The problem is, most of us never learn to challenge that morning autopilot, so we accept whatever old mental soundtrack shows up before we even get out of bed. What people miss is that the first thought is often a habit, not a conscious decision. If someone has been anxious for years, they wake up anxious not because the day is threatening, but because their brain has learned to prepare for threat. If someone has been overwhelmed for months, they might wake up overwhelmed before anything has even happened. And because these thoughts feel automatic, they feel true. But automatic doesn't mean accurate. Automatic means practiced. Your brain is always rewriting itself based on repetition, and mornings are one of the most easily programmed moments of the entire day. If you choose the first thought intentionally, even for 10 seconds, you begin retraining your mind to start on steady ground instead of emotional chaos. This doesn't require unrealistic positivity or ignoring problems. It simply requires an intentional pause. Before grabbing the phone, before rushing into tasks, before mentally listing everything that needs fixing, take one breath and ask yourself, how do I want to show up today? That single question activates the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for direction, clarity, decision-making, and self-control. Instead of going straight into emotional reaction, you go into mental leadership. One small conscious thought disrupts the automatic negative cycle and gives you space to choose a better tone. You might not control everything that happens today, but you can control the voice you start with. And that matters more than most people realize. Because the truth is, your first thought becomes the environment you walk into. If your first thought is, "I'm tired," you look for evidence that you have no energy. If your first thought is, I'm capable, you begin noticing small moments that prove it. If your first thought is, everything is going wrong, your brain filters out everything going right. And if your first thought is, today is mine to shape, your body begins responding as if that's true. Your first thought is not just a thought. It's the pilot setting the direction of the flight. When you start your day from a place of grounded, intentional clarity, you give yourself the chance to win the day before you've even stood up. Small actions in the morning have a powerful psychological effect because they create proof, not promises. When you start your day by doing something simple and intentional, making your bed, drinking a glass of water, stretching for 60 seconds, your brain gets the message, I follow through. That message is more powerful than motivation because motivation comes and goes, but self-proof builds identity. When someone accomplishes 10 tiny things before breakfast, they walk out the door already feeling like a person who can handle the day ahead. It's not about the size of the action, it's about building the pattern of consistency. Every small, completed action is a vote for the future version of yourself you're trying to become. Most people wait for big wins to feel confident, landing the job, losing the weight, finishing the project, but waiting for huge accomplishments means confidence always stays far away in the future. Meanwhile, the person who does tiny things each morning creates miniature victories that stack quickly. When someone starts the day with achievements, the momentum makes the next task easier and the next one after that. It's like pushing a flywheel, slow at first, but once it starts moving, everything gets smoother. Confidence is not something you get, it is something you build, one completed action at a time. And mornings are the perfect time to start stacking those actions before life tries to pull your attention away. A small morning action is powerful because it happens at a time when nobody is judging, nobody is rushing you, and nothing is demanding your attention yet. These early hours are your territory, and they allow you to set the tone before the world sets it for you. When you start your day already accomplishing something, even something tiny, you leave the house feeling ahead instead of behind. That difference changes posture, voice, focus, and decision-making. Starting strong makes setbacks later in the day feel less personal and less overwhelming. You don't crumble as easily because you've already proven to yourself that you are capable before the challenges even arrive. Another reason small morning actions build confidence fast is that they are measurable and repeatable. Anyone can wake up and commit to one simple task: make the bed, tidy the desk, write one line in a journal, read 2 pages, stretch for 30 seconds. These aren't complicated promises. They're realistic, approachable, and completely within your control. The brain loves routines that are predictable. And once your morning is filled with small, predictable successes, your stress response goes down and your sense of control goes up. When your brain gets used to success early, it begins expecting success later as well. It's no longer waiting for the day to go wrong. It's looking for more things to accomplish. Small actions also matter because they teach your brain that you can show up even when you don't feel like it. Anyone can perform at their best when they are motivated, rested, and energized. But doing one small thing on a tired morning, on an overwhelmed morning, on a stressed morning, that is how consistency is born. Consistency builds trust with yourself, and trust is the root of confidence. When you trust that you will still show up no matter how you feel, you stop doubting yourself. You stop overthinking. You stop starting and stopping. Instead, you start moving forward steadily, day after day, one tiny action at a time, until the version of you with no confidence is just a memory. Small morning actions work because they don't rely on emotional fireworks. They rely on follow-through. They don't require dramatic energy or life-changing decisions. They ask only for one moment of commitment, something that can be done in less than a minute. And when you stack enough of those moments over weeks and months, you become a person who takes action naturally. You begin expecting more from yourself, not in a stressful way, but in a grounded, capable way. You look in the mirror and see someone who doesn't just talk about changing, they're actually doing it. Tiny morning actions won't fix your whole life in one day, but they will start changing who you believe you are today. And once your belief changes, everything else catches up. Clarity before movement is one of the most overlooked habits in the morning because most people wake up and immediately start doing without deciding. They jump into tasks, thinking that activity equals progress, but movement without direction often leads to exhaustion without results. When you start the day reacting, you might look busy, but you're not necessarily going anywhere meaningful. Taking just 60 seconds to slow down and ask, what actually matters today, gives your brain a focal point before the world begins fighting for your attention. That moment of clarity is like drawing a map before driving. You can still move fast, but now you're moving towards something, not just away from chaos. It's the difference between surviving the day and shaping it. People underestimate how much mental noise they wake up with. Thoughts from yesterday, stress from last week, unfinished conversations, responsibilities, messages, pressures, all waiting as soon as your eyes open. If you don't pause to filter that noise, it becomes the emotional weather system you walk into the day with, and suddenly you're reacting to feelings instead of decisions. But when you take a moment to breathe, think, and define the day before acting, you give your mind a chance to reset. You're not ignoring the stress. You're putting yourself back in the driver's seat. Starting with clarity doesn't remove the challenges ahead, but it gives you a calm, grounded foundation to face them. And in a world where so many people wake up already overwhelmed, that foundation becomes a competitive advantage. Clarity first also reduces emotional reactivity. When you skip the pause and go straight into your day, every small interruption feels bigger because your mind hasn't stabilized yet. Someone cuts you off in traffic, a message arrives with a stressful tone, a task takes longer than expected, and suddenly your whole day is set off course. But when you've taken a minute to center yourself and select your priorities, those same interruptions don't shake you in the same way. You have a reference point inside yourself, something solid to return to. Instead of reacting with frustration or panic, you respond with perspective. Your emotions stop controlling the day because the day is no longer being decided by emotion, it's being decided by intention. One of the biggest benefits of getting clarity before movement is that it helps you distinguish what is urgent from what is important. Most people confuse the two. The urgent is loud, demanding, and filled with pressure. The important is quieter, but actually shapes your future. People who start the day by reacting usually spend the next 12 hours chasing urgency, putting out fires, responding, rushing, trying not to fall behind. They go to bed tired but not fulfilled because none of the important things moved. But when you take even 1 minute in the morning to ask, what 3 things matter most today, you shift your brain into strategic thinking. You begin choosing instead of chasing. And choosing leads to progress that compounds, not just tasks that disappear. Clarity is a powerful emotional stabilizer because it gives the mind something specific to commit to. The brain loves direction. It works best when it knows the assignment. Waking up and immediately scrolling or rushing creates mental fragmentation, where your attention splits into 10 different directions before breakfast. But deciding your priorities before the day starts gives your brain a single channel to focus on. Even if the day gets messy, and it will, it's easier to return to that center. And the more mornings you start this way, the more natural it becomes. Instead of waking up in chaos, your mind starts waking up looking for direction because it has learned that clarity comes first. You stop being at the mercy of your environment and start influencing how you meet it. This habit doesn't need to be dramatic. It can be one deep breath, one sentence in a journal, one thought spoken in your head. What matters is the pause. That pause is where you reclaim control. That pause is where you remind yourself, I am the one who decides how I show up today. The world will always have requests, people will always have expectations, and life will always have curveballs. But taking a moment for clarity means you enter the day as the leader of your internal environment, not a passenger being dragged through it. Clarity before movement transforms busy days into productive ones, stressful mornings into grounded ones, and ordinary routines into intentional living. When you decide before you act, your day begins with ownership, and ownership changes everything. Your morning self-talk has more power than most people realize because the first voice you hear in the morning becomes the voice that follows you for the rest of the day. If the first thing you tell yourself is doubt, worry, or criticism, then your brain carries that tone into every task, every conversation, and every challenge that comes later. You start the day already feeling behind, unsupported, and unprepared, not because reality is bad, but because your internal voice made the world feel heavier than it is. The mind doesn't just hear what we tell it, it believes it. That's why the way you speak to yourself in the morning is not just a reflection of how you feel, it is a blueprint for who you become. If your morning words are destructive, your confidence has to fight uphill all day just to reach level ground. Self-talk is the narrator of your identity. Every time you say, "I can't," "I'm not good enough," this day is already ruined. Your brain begins looking for evidence to prove you right. The mind hates being wrong, so it scans the environment to match the story you've already told yourself. If you start your day thinking, "I'm overwhelmed," every task will look bigger. If you start your day thinking, "Nothing goes right for me," every inconvenience will feel personal. But the opposite is also true. If you begin your morning with, "I can handle this," "I'm improving," or "Today I'm showing up," your brain begins scanning for moments that confirm you are capable. You don't need to be unrealistically positive. You just need to be intentional. One sentence can change your internal filter, and when your filter changes, your emotional experience changes with it. The reason morning self-talk is so influential is because the mind is most impressionable right after waking. Your brain is shifting out of its subconscious state, moving from dream mode into full awareness. This is when your thoughts bypass some of the usual resistance and sink deeper. That's why the messages you give yourself in the first 10 minutes carry more weight than the ones you tell yourself 3 hours later. Many people unknowingly set a negative emotional anchor during this time by thinking, "I hope today isn't as bad as yesterday," or "I'm already tired." And once that emotional anchor is dropped, the day is spent trying to climb out of a hole they never needed to be in. Changing your morning language changes your emotional anchor. It moves you from defensiveness to direction. People often underestimate how much their internal dialogue affects how they behave. If someone wakes up telling themselves they are disorganized, they behave like someone who is disorganized. If they wake up telling themselves they're confident, they stand, speak, and make decisions with more authority. Identity is shaped not just by results, but by repetition. The story you tell yourself every morning becomes the story your brain begins to accept as who I am. If you repeatedly tell yourself you're someone who can't change, you stop trying. But if you repeatedly tell yourself you're someone who is improving, even slowly, you start looking for opportunities to prove that belief true. We all become who we consistently tell ourselves we are, and mornings are when that story is written most clearly. Morning self-talk also sets the emotional temperature for interactions with other people. If you start the day frustrated with yourself, it's much easier to get frustrated with others. If you start the day feeling worthless, it's easy to assume others see you that way too. But when you begin the morning grounded, supported, and internally strong, you show up differently in conversations, relationships, and challenges. You are less reactive because you aren't fighting an internal battle before the external ones even appear. You don't need other people to validate you as much because you already did that first thing in the morning. When your inner voice supports you, the world feels less threatening and more workable. This practice doesn't require dramatic speeches or forced positivity. It can be as simple as one sentence spoken in your head while sitting on the side of the bed. I'm capable. I'm learning. Today, I'm in control of how I show up. Those words don't magically remove difficulty, but they shift how you meet that difficulty. And when you shift how you meet life, life starts meeting you differently. Over time, the morning voice becomes not just motivational, it becomes identity. And identity becomes action. Action becomes habit. Habit becomes character. When you start the morning by speaking to yourself with direction instead of doubt, you are shaping the person you are becoming, not reacting to the person you used to be. Your morning thoughts don't just set the tone of your day, they shape the tone of your life. An intentional morning routine matters more than a perfect one because life isn't predictable, and trying to execute some flawless system every single day usually leads to guilt, frustration, and eventually giving up. Many people fail not because they are incapable, but because they set a standard so rigid that any disruption feels like failure. Then one missed day becomes three, and the routine is abandoned entirely. But when your routine is intentional instead of perfect, you give yourself room to adapt while still moving forward. You're no longer trying to impress anyone, not even yourself. You're simply choosing actions that support the person you want to become, even if they're small. Intentionality turns effort into alignment instead of pressure. On some mornings, you'll have time and energy to journal, exercise, meditate, read, prepare the day, and still feel centered. But there will also be days when you barely have the strength to sit up in bed before life starts demanding your attention. If your routine must be perfect to count, those chaotic days knock you out of progress entirely. But if your routine is intentional, even 1 minute of stillness, one deep breath, or one sentence of clarity still counts as victory. And when progress is flexible, consistency becomes realistic. You no longer need a perfect schedule to grow. You just need a commitment to show up in whatever way the day allows. Small actions done consistently beat grand actions done occasionally, and intentional routines make consistency possible. Intentionality also keeps your morning routine meaningful instead of mechanical. Anyone can go through the motions, drink water, stretch, read something, but without intention, those actions turn into tasks rather than transformation. When you slow down enough to understand why you're doing each habit, the habit gains emotional weight. You're not journaling because someone online told you to. You're journaling because your mind deserves a place to think. You're not exercising because it looks good to be disciplined. You're doing it because your body functions better when you care for it. When your routine has a reason, even small actions create strong psychological impact, and that emotional connection makes the routine easier to maintain long term. One of the biggest strengths of an intentional morning routine is that it transforms identity faster. A perfect routine focuses on performance. Did I check off every box? An intentional routine focuses on alignment. Did I act like the person I'm working to become? These are two very different outcomes. Someone who connects to intention slowly begins to think of themselves as someone who chooses their day rather than someone who is dragged through it. They become someone who leads instead of reacts, someone who grounds themselves instead of spinning mentally, someone who takes action not because they feel amazing, but because they have direction. Identity shapes behavior, and behavior reinforces identity. And that loop is strengthened best through small, intentional daily actions. An intentional morning routine also prevents self-sabotage disguised as perfectionism. Many people have a quiet, hidden belief that if they can't do something perfectly, it's not worth doing at all. That belief destroys progress in every area of life. But when your morning routine is built around the principle of something is better than nothing, you teach your brain that forward movement is always an option, even on the worst days. You break the all or nothing mindset that keeps people stuck in cycles of stopping and restarting. Instead of thinking, I failed today, you can think, I showed up in the way I could today. That shift removes the shame that kills momentum and replaces it with self-trust, which fuels growth far more effectively than pressure ever will. In the end, an intentional morning routine is about ownership. It's about beginning your day with the feeling that you decided something for yourself before the world decided everything for you. It's not about checking off 10 habits. It's about doing one thing on purpose. It's planting a flag in the ground first thing in the morning that says, "My day will not run me, I will run it." Some days you'll take 10 steps forward. Other days you'll only take one. But intention ensures that even the smallest steps move in the right direction. Over weeks and months, those steps accumulate, and the person you become will not be the one who lived perfectly. It will be the one who lived deliberately.